So happy to say Vinny Perth is with us on the line. Evening, Vinny.
Evening, Joe. How are you doing?
Yeah, great. I understand you're on the way to the Rovers game.
Yeah, sitting in the car park and live football. I can say from being out in Bray and Waterford yesterday, the winter is well and truly on its way, and it's no different tonight. But I suppose when you're addicted to football, you'll grin and bear it. So it's a cold night tonight, but it's great to see crowds walking towards the stadium. Live football is brilliant, and we have a little bit of a product here in Ireland that's worth pointing out when you can.
So I've heard you over the last 2 years be very positive about Irish performances, quite negative about other Irish performances, and plenty of times somewhere in between. What would you say of Saturday?
Yeah, I think it's funny because I've listened to the news round, and I think it's so split in the middle, isn't it, in terms of, not split in the middle, you either have to be on one side or the other side. I think there's a balance and there's a common ground to be found, and particularly the summer, I play golf at least once a week with Richard Dunn, and I'd be still really close friends with Stephen Kenny. Sometimes I feel like Bruce's Gali trying to have peace talks in the middle of it all, but I think it's fair to say that there is common ground. I think there's negatives and positives to where we are at the moment, and I think the huge amount of heavy lifting has been done in the sense of the caps that some of these young players have had. I was on the show last Wednesday, more or less predicted the team. I tried to, and I mean that in the sense of, because you get the sense that Stephen is trying to change things, and I think the back three really sums that up. And you would have to say that back three that played the other day is outstanding, and it's really something that can be built on. It's something that gives Irish fans, has to give us a huge sense of hope. But we still ultimately lost the game, and that's where the balance is. And we've had, ex-players and pundits alike being critical of losing games, and you've had people being very positive of the performances. And I'm not sure there's a right or wrong answer. My only fear is that, for Stephen's point of view, he doesn't do a huge amount of work for the Irish setup, and then someone else comes along and gets the benefits, and that would be the concern at the moment.
Well, we were just saying, come 2024, if potentially Ireland don't make the Euros and potentially FAI and Stephen agree, well, that's that. Whoever next man in is will say, well, I've just inherited this team of a bunch of guys 25 years old or younger, and they all have about 30 or 40 caps. This is brilliant. What a profile. So, as you said, there is a lot of heavy lifting being done right now, but of course there is also an importance and a premium on getting results. The interesting question is, so at the moment we're seeing lots of positives in the performance and the style of play, and I think again that's applicable to Saturday, but what's also applicable to Saturday is this team maybe isn't quite getting over the line or isn't getting its just desserts, and we're wondering if come next year they'll really benefit from these experiences and we'll see them finally come through these sticky matches and win the points, or if actually it'll be a continuation and we'll be saying, well, this is just a trend with this team.
Yeah, I think there's a fine balance in all. Ultimately, football at all levels, but particularly the higher level, will find, there's fine margins and big moments. And there's no doubt the Troy Parrott was a huge moment, a huge moment. I don't think people say the penalty was a huge moment, but that's an error, and it was a penalty, and rightly so. But I think the Troy Parrott chance, would Steve Clarke have got criticised for being too open by the Scottish media if we'd have went and scored and went 2-1 up and hung on? So, I mean, but that's the game and that's the gig, and it is the biggest job probably in Irish sport is the international soccer team manager. So I think we've got to find a balance with that. Stephen and his staff have to look at how the game went against them the other day. They have to learn from it.
And what would you pick out there, for instance? Because things like his substitutions are picked apart invariably, and tactics are picked apart. So, what do you suspect the management team will come up with when they analyse themselves?
Yeah, well, they'll analyse the game and they'll completely and utterly know where it went wrong and the slight changes Scotland made, and did they react quick enough or not? And it's not just the manager. That's sometimes the role of coaching staff to spot little things, little changes, and as a collective then they make the decision in terms of how to change it. I would say, there's no doubt Scottish fullbacks got more and more joy as the game developed, and whether we were closing them down by our midfielders, or we were brave enough to send a Matt Doherty up and engage higher up the pitch, or James McLean, There's different ways of dealing with that. The one thing I will say is, and I'd like to think I'm not a pro Stephen Kenny for the sake of, I like to think of being balanced to a point, is I would say his in-game management or a half-time, anyone that's played under him, worked with him, has always been like, his knowledge of what's happened in the game has been exceptional. If you speak to him half-time or just after a game, and then you review that game, I think most players that played under will say that has been exceptional. So I don't question that. I just think big moments went against us the other day, and that's a flippant comment as well, and it's too easy to say that. But players have to take some responsibility. I think Matt Doherty's defending, we all know, was poor for the goal, but he drifted back, and the problem when you play with a back three is sometimes it ends up as a back five, and when you end up with a back five, it means the opposition, both fullbacks have the freedom of the pitch, and we've seen that a little bit. So yeah, the in-game management probably has to improve, but they'll know that themselves. They'll do all the video analysis and they'll know where they went wrong. But I think this is big boy football, and you're judged on those harsh calls. And it was a really disappointing end to what was, by and large, a good performance, I would say. So they've got to improve on it, and they've got to learn from it.
In Ogbene and in Hogan, he does have options who are scoring and playing games at club level. He went for Obafemi and Parrott and reunited the two from June in Dublin against Scotland, and I think we saw a semblance of a partnership developing there. What did you make of their performance together, and do they justify selection again and to start again tomorrow?
Yeah, that was the only selection I got wrong. I thought you'd have went with Chidozie Obenya because of his form. I think Irish teams have to be not picked always on form, but it has to play a part in it. So you can see it. I don't think it was Troy's best performance. I think he's played better. And forget the chance. I just mean his general play, but his work rate is why he's in the team. When we're away from home, that 3-5 sort of 2-1 or whatever way you want to call that sort of system. We've seen it with Jamie McGrath's performance against Portugal, Troy Parrott's performances away from home, say against Ukraine, or Jason Knight. We need that running power. We can't have two out now centre forwards away from home against the better seeded nations. But you can certainly sense there's a partnership building there between the two of them. Whether he sticks with them tomorrow night or not will be interesting. But it's very hard to hold back someone like Chidozie, who's been in outstanding form. But we've got to find a balance with these guys. And when you look at someone like John Ulrich, it took him 20-odd games to score for Ireland, if I'm not mistaken. It is difficult to come by goals, and we are missing a Robbie Keane or a Gareth Bale that the likes of Wales had or we had back in the day. And you don't see that happening anytime soon. But it's really a difficult one to answer in terms of, I really like the partnership that started the other night, but there doesn't look like there's loads of goals in them. And that ultimately, if Ireland aren't winning games over the next 12 months, Stephen's going to be under pressure to hold on to his job.
And
so
Vinny,
he's got to get some form in that.
I presume you've seen plenty of Troy Parrott across his teenage years, and I emphasise he's still only 20, but prolific was a word that was used around him as he was coming through. Would he have been renowned for taking chances like that?
Yeah, he would be, and I think if you look at the chance back, he just never got the ball out of his feet. And once you don't do that, then you're under a little bit of pressure. I wouldn't say it came off his heel, but it's slightly back in his stance as he's hitting it. But you've got to remember, when Troy Parrott was scoring lots of goals, say underage, he's the best player on the pitch by a mile. When he's scoring goals for even Spurs coming through, he's probably cut above most people he's playing against. But then when you go up the levels, it obviously gets harder. And I would say I've seen him live for Preston this year, been really impressed with him. But he's and I really don't want to drive your listeners mad, but there's a new one in football now where it's a 9.5 position where you're not necessarily a 10 and you're not number 9, and people are starting to think maybe Troy is this sort of 9.5. A throwback to maybe someone like, I wouldn't compare him to Terry Sheringham, but I'm saying in terms of the position he plays. Yeah. I think for Ireland we need that link up, because we're not good enough probably yet in midfield, although we view its potential. We need one of our strikers to give us a hand in that midfield area. So look, Troy will be beating himself up over that, but Again, for someone so young, we've a lot of weight on the shoulders from an Irish point of view.
There's no doubt the Irish midfield three worked incredibly hard, and for the whole game that they were on the pitch, you had Molumby and Knight sprinting out to fullbacks, and invariably they tired a touch as the game went on. But in the second half, as things became either at times a touch frenetic or Scotland really started to have periods of dominance, there was never a spell where the Irish midfield were able to take the ball down and take the sting out of things for even just 2 minutes or a minute, or just enough to quell things a touch. We were quite back to front a lot. And I'm wondering if you think that's an experience issue, or is that a quality issue, or your read on the Irish midfield three in that sense?
I'd say it's definitely a mixture of both, and not to dodge the question, but the experience definitely will come with this group in time. I think Josh Cullen has improved all of the time. I think we overhyped him maybe 12 months ago, and I think now he's getting closer to that. Jason Molumby again gives us real running power, but look, I mean the other solution is, say, whether it's Jeff Hendrick or Alan Brown in there, and that's not worked. So we have to make these changes, and while the manager doesn't get a pass on these changes, like, we have to evolve from Jeff Hendrick into Jason Molumby. Doesn't mean Jeff Hendrick's finished with us, but we have to evolve, and there's going to be bad days on the way with that. But it was away from home against a team who are, I would say, probably 12 to 18 months further down the line than we are, have a little bit more quality, and we got punished. And you know, the easiest thing to say is we could have made some changes and put some experience in there. But I go back to people like Matt Doherty being more on, again, using the real football word, more on the front foot. James McLean, they became a back five, and that meant our midfield was under pressure, as in couldn't keep getting out to the fullbacks. And if we'd have been braver as a group and got further up the pitch, I think that sort of would have balanced things out.
I presume that was manager's orders, though. I presume McLean and Doherty were told to sit tight.
No, I wouldn't say so. No, I think there was a lot of pressure from Scotland. I actually don't. I think Ireland had huge plaudits. I just think they were good. I don't think they were as good as maybe others felt. And I think as players away from home, I don't know the psychology of it, why, but away from home, it's just easier just to be that couple of yards back and to give yourself a little bit of cover. And the Scottish crowd were up, their players were up, and we took a back step. I think that's summed up by the goal. I mean, the first goal is you know, their fullback is taking us on 10 yards from the end line. It's you've got to say it's lazy defending by Matt Doherty. I think we've got to make the changes, but a fullback has got to go and press that, not let him get the cross in or engage him higher up the pitch, particularly when, you've got to remember, we've got three centre-halves behind our wing-backs. So I don't think that's a manager's decision. I think that's a subconscious decision by players just to drift back and not be brave at that moment. And I think that's ultimately what's cost us, because it was fine margins the other night. And I think when you play with a back three and two wing-backs, you know, most of the top teams we watch in Premiership or wherever, the wing-backs are normally
pushed up, yeah.
The best players.
It's funny to get different opinions and things, because, for instance, Gary Breen reckoned that Doherty and McLean staying back in that five and Molumby and Knight running out to engage with the Scottish fullbacks, that was very much the plan, and that it worked a treat, and that would have been the orders from management. And it's funny, you're not so sure. So again, we're all kind of trying to interpret the performance in our own different ways. So maybe Stephen Kenny clarifies that at some stage. Regardless,
but you've got to remember on that one, Joe, just real quickly. And if you paint the picture in your head, if you switch the ball from the right to the left, as in Scotland switched the ball from the right to the left, you're not going to get Jason Knight coming out midfield as in and going closing the ball on as in the right back. That has to come from your starting position of your fullback every so often. So to be honest, I think we're probably both right in the sense of there's no set, particularly when you're playing against, if you were playing with a 3-5-2, we'll call it, when you're playing against a 4-3-3 shape, or there's no set who goes and closes people down. There's different variants of it, and at different stages, different people have different roles. So there wouldn't be just a hard and fast rule that Jason Knight has to do that and Malumbi has to do that. And players would be, to be fair, players are well coached at the moment, and they know the difference between different systems. And there is a bit of bravery away from home needed, and we probably fell short in my view.
Tomorrow is a very different game.
Yeah, and this is where I've probably been critical of Ireland, and this is where I would say to you, we know Armenia are going to come in tomorrow, and most likely the easiest thing in football is to set up defensively. That's the easiest thing. Try and stop goals. That's what they'll do tomorrow. They've got a bit of a hiding last week, and their coach is probably under a little bit of pressure, so they'll make themselves hard to beat. Now, the problem I would feel Ireland will have is we're going to probably start with two wing-backs again, and you've got to hurt teams who set that way down the sides of them. And that's where, if it's, say, McLean and Doherty, I think he might make a change there, but if it's the two of them, are they good enough to go and really hurt teams wide, 1v1s, and we don't get overloads in those wide areas? That's the concern I have for Ireland against those lesser nations, and the results have backed that up. We've struggled against the lesser nations, so I would have concerns tomorrow, although I think we'll probably win. I believe there's a great mood in the camp, seems to be a great togetherness about them, so I'd like to think they'll win tomorrow, but it's a big test for them, believe it or not, in the sense of it's another team who are going to pack the defence and be really solid, and I just don't like this system against teams like that, and I think that's an area where we've got to improve.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll hear from you in the coming days on OTB AM or in the evening show. Vinny, thanks for the time being. Enjoy the game this evening.
Will do. Big game in the League of Ireland tonight, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Cheers. Vinny Perth with us there on the line as he hops out of his car to watch the Rovers game, which kicks off at 8 o'clock at home to UCD.